Ah, that's great. What a lot of fun that is. Appreciate it, guys. We are closing up the series today on 3 Cheers for Pain, where we have talked about the fact that pain is actually a gift from God, that without it, where in the world would we be? We would tear ourselves to pieces, as happens with folks who have modern day leprosy, where all their pain sensors are gone, but they're healthy other than that, and what they do is they break bones, put out their eyes, when they have stuff in their eyes you can't feel, and rub their eyes, and so all kinds of things happen when you don't have pain. And we talked last week some about some of the gain of pain and the benefits of honest words that are spoken to us, that are hurtful sometimes, and yet still painful. If you'd like to hear more of that, you can go online, or woodlandgmc.com, and the sermons are on there. I appreciate Jeff Beltran, who's been able to put our sermons online for the last few Sundays. So way to go, Jeff. And you can click on there and catch up on the sermons if you would like to. Today, and looking at the last one, last of the series, called No More Pain. We want to talk about that today. Earlier this week, Andrew, my youngest son, who's 10 years old, he and I were coming back to the house from Woodland. We'd actually been down here playing ping pong. We have a ping pong table now, thanks to Keith Pratt. And Keith is in here. We're like a real church now. We have a ping pong table. That was a missing element, having a ping pong table. And Keith Pratt gave us one. And so Andrew and I were, wow, there's my ride. That's cool. I guess it's landing somewhere. But anyway, so Keith gave us the ping pong table, and Andrew and I were, we had to check it out. We were sort of obligated to make sure it was safe for everybody. And so we had first ping pong game down there. And on our way back to the house, Andrew was in the passenger side, and he wasn't driving, of course, he's 10. But he was over there, and he said, "Dad, there's some kids at school saying the world's going to come to an end in 2012. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What do you think about that?" He said, "So I'm asking you, what do you think about that?" And so we had a conversation about the end of the world, about what was going to happen. And supposedly on December 21st, right? December 21st, 2012, the world's coming to an end. According to some people who have looked at a Mayan calendar and noticed that it runs out on that day. And so we had a conversation about the end of the world. And he said, does the Bible talk about the end of the world? I said, yeah, the Bible talks about the end of the world. What's going to happen there? And so we had this conversation about eschatological theology, about the end of the world, about what's going to happen there. And one of the things that I know is true is that human beings have this innate desire to sort of be thrilled at destruction. It's a funny thing. But we're sort of captivated sometimes by things being destroyed. You ever see on TV, they're getting ready to blow up a building, right? Building's been there for a long time, and the bigger the building, the more TV stations be on it. And they'll say, "Watch this, they're going to blow it up any second now." And it's like 3, 2, 1, and then boom, the building comes crashing down. They don't do that when they're building a building up, right? That's not very exciting. But on watching a building come down, boy, all the TV cameras are there. There's something in human beings about destruction. I remember when I was about 14 years old, one of my coaches was convinced that the end of the world was going to come just any minute. And he was like betting people whether the end of the world, I don't know how you collect on that, but he was betting people that the end of the world would come within 10 years. That was 1974. Betting people, he's a good guy, great coach, wonderful guy. But boy, he was convinced that the world would come to an end. And if you sort of argued with him otherwise, he's like mad. No, he's rooting for the end of the world to come, within 10 years. And you've seen theological-minded people or religious people get all intoxicated about the end of the world. But I've noticed it's not just a religious thing, it's just in human beings. right? I remember when I was a little kid, scientists were saying the world was going to come to an end if we didn't do something, you know, then it was going to be an ice age, right? Remember that? I remember the Weekly Reader, we'd read about the incoming ice age. It was just going to freeze everything. And I remember thinking about that. Boy, that'd be bad. I don't like winter, and ice age doesn't sound good to me. And then today, you know, one of the things is about warming trends and about, you know, the world may come to an end because the world's getting too hot. And I'm not speaking to the science of it. I'm not a scientist. I don't know about the science of it. I think we ought to sort of read the science of it and have some understanding of it. But I do know this, that there are atheists that have a religious fervor about the end of the world. Atheists that have a religious fervor about the end of the world where it comes to global warming. Now, again, please don't get me wrong. I'm not a scientist. I think we ought to read about global warming. We ought to, it's a biblical instruction that we ought to take care of the earth. And if we're doing something to damage the earth, we ought to do something. But I'm hearing some people saying the world's going to end in like 3 years, you know, based on, you know, you drive your car 1 more mile, it's just going to all come crashing down. And what I want to say to that is, there's something in us that likes destruction. I know people that are ardent Democrats, and if there's a Republican in office, they almost hate it if the economy's good. I know people that are Republicans, if there's a Democrat in office, they almost hate it if the economy's good. There's something in us that sort of cheers for destruction at times. And it's something we need to watch out for. Even an ardent atheist like Sigmund Freud said there was something in people that he called the death instinct, where like people cheered for destruction and sort of were enamored by it. And I want to say to you that in regards to a movie, in regards to scientific theories, that all of these things we should take in information and learn as much as we can, but we also ought to have a critical eye. We also ought to have a critical eye. Now, let me speak specifically, is the end of the world going to happen on December 21st, 2012? No. It's not going to happen. It's got to get to the bank. It's not happening. How do I know that? Scripture. How do I know that from Scripture? Because of this verse. Look at this verse. The disciples asked, I'm sorry, I bet it's not on this version of it. Yeah, right there it is. Disciples asked Jesus, when's the end of the world going to happen? And Jesus said that it's not for you to know the times or the seasons the Father has said by his own authority. So you're not going to know. And so, how do I know that it's not going to happen on December 21st, 2012? Because other people said that they know it's going to happen there, and Jesus says nobody knows. It's going to happen at a time where no one knows. And when people start setting dates and times and things like that on stuff, you can pretty much bet it's not going to be then. And one of the things that I've been critical of religious groups is I know religious groups that have made money off of fear-mongering, right? I mean, made money off of fear-mongering. You can go to websites and look at it. End of the World 2012, and you know you can send in $20 and learn more information about why it's going to end. And if you send them $100, they'll tell you more information and stuff like that. And there are people that make money off of end of the world. Then there are other legitimate people, religious people, who talk about end of the world, end times things like the Left Behind books. I think the authors of those are well-meaning, and people have been touched by those books and turned to Christ on them. When it comes to the scientific stuff, I am certain that there are scientists that are warning us about global warming, that are sincere scientists, and we ought to listen to them. And then there are other people making money off this deal. Guaranteed. And so we have to look at all of that with a discerning spirit. Even as we go to great lengths to take care of the earth, because it's part of our responsibility as Christians. But I want to speak, well, just for a second. The whole sermon isn't on this, but I just want to say to people like my son Andrew, is the end of the world going to happen on December 21st, 2012? No.